Thank you for joining our webinar today. The topic is the ROI of codeless test automation. And we work with many companies and everybody wants to prove the value within their organization and really, how can it help them? So Artem Golyabev is the speaker. He is the co-founder of testRigor. He is really excited about helping companies to become an order of magnitude more effective in QA and to deliver software faster. He started his career 25 years ago, building software for logistics companies. And he has worked at companies like Microsoft and Salesforce, where he learned best practices and the top technologies in QA. And he is now bringing that to companies and our customers to allow them to catch up with the software giants and become much more efficient in their testing. So I will turn it over to you, Artem.
Hello, everyone. Without further ado, let me share the screen. People can see my screen. Let me talk a little bit about the topic today. What we will be discussing today, we will be talking about ROI of codeless test automation. Specifically, what are the benefits of modern codeless test automation tools, as well as tips on how to calculate the ROI for your team. All right, so what are the challenges in general which prevent people from being able to automate, as things like two-factor authentication, capture, third-party systems, ever-changing UI, and physical non-computer interfaces or devices. In a lot of cases, there are already out-of-the-box solutions for that. Definitely, it's not a problem for third-party ever-changing UI, as you will see in a second. However, there probably needs to be used some other third-party components for non-computer interface testing. All right, so today we will be focusing specifically on software testing for mostly web and mobile applications. Did you know that today, in 2022, 70% of all testing is done manually, which is resulting in $1.7 trillion losses due to bugs in production. So it is huge, and if you have any doubts how much the damage can be, you can estimate what's revenue as a company and how much downside would cost based on this revenue divided by that time, 365 days a year and so on. However, we already have Selenium and Appium. Selenium have been around from early 2000s, so it's almost going to be 20 years. But with these technologies around, and before that there were others, what's the problem? Well, it's unfortunately not that simple. The UI is constantly changing. There needs to hire engineers and so on and so forth. We'll get to that in a second in a little bit more details. The current situation, as you can imagine, if vast majority of test cases are executed manual, then it is technically impossible to release software without bugs in production. Let's say you have a 1 month testing cycle with manual testers in your release. Let's say after 2 weeks, you have found a bug. So engineers need to fix that, and then technically speaking, ideally need to restart the whole testing. It will take another, let's say 2 weeks to find another bug, and so on and so forth. It's just never ending story. So we're usually only 2 outcomes, and we're never release or release with bugs. And this is a downside of manual testing. This is almost a challenge, always a challenge. And there are issues with automation. So first of all, there's a gigantic amount of maintenance. A lot of tests keep constantly breaking, up to a point where if you have more than 100 tests, you can't actually use your test suite in your CI/CD. Costs are too high, it's too slow to create, and all of those challenges. Let's look for a second, though. Why is that? How come all of those technologies and everything have been around for so long? And it's still such a gigantic issue. It's still only 30% are automated. Why didn't company just went ahead and did 95%? Why is not 90% average, let's say? And I believe there are two main reasons for that. As you can see, I will be illustrating that on those code examples on the screen. On the left, as you can see, there is a Selenium a small test to login or login. And on the right, there is the same test in testRigor, doing exactly the same thing, actually a little bit more. Now, it's absolutely, I believe, obvious for everyone that you have to be an engineer in order to even understand what is written on the left side. Mind you, even write that. Not only that, but unfortunately, it goes even further than that. If you have automated tests, then only QA engineers can understand the test failures. Let's say you had 100 tests. Let's say one test of those tests had failed, and there is a stack trace, and nobody except QA engineers who wrote your tests can understand what is going on. You can't tell if it's a flakiness of the test, it's a real issue, where issue is located, and so on and so forth. There's basically no information whatsoever. Basically, that's a huge limitation. That means that even though you have technically some automation, non-technical people cannot use that automation in order to improve their own performance. So that's a gigantic issue. And in general, as you can imagine, there's a challenge to hire engineers and QA engineers in particular, because there are less of them. So what's the alternative, let's say, on codeless systems? There are several types of codeless test automation out there. Then people think about codeless test automation, they usually have a record and play in mind, which is not necessarily the case. For example, in testRigor case, it is plain English based. In either case, be it record and play or plain English or something else, they all designed to enable non-technical people to build automation. So that's your huge benefit, which would be often basis of your ROI calculation right there. So you technically can involve your existing manual testers team to help out to build test automation. So that's great. So now let's look into second, or probably the largest reason why people were not able to achieve test coverage we desire. And that is reliance on details of implementation, especially in systems like Selenium and Appium. As you can see in this code on the left, there are reliance on some IDs, on a name, and on this XPath in order to perform the test. So basically, what is going on is tests often written the way that, not often, basically Selenium de facto forces you to do it this way. So like if you write in Selenium, you write it the way that if you write the test on how page was implemented at a certain moment in the past. So you basically hook up into, okay, so this is how page was implemented, relying on IDs, names, XPaths, and other information that is not visible to end user. And therefore, as engineers progress and update the page, rendering ever so slightly, what's happening is that the test fails because it no longer corresponds to it checks for that specific implementation of the page, which was expected before, but the implementation changed ever so slightly. So therefore, the test will fail, even though from end user's perspective, everything is working perfectly fine. So therefore, is the unfortunate reality of Selenium and Appium tests is that they are testing implementation, not end-to-end tests. So so they're trying to use unit testing concepts and apply them to end-to-end testing, and it's not really working because this is incorrect approach. The correct approach should be testing on end user level, because this is what we're trying to achieve specifically for end-to-end tests. And again, in case of Codeless test automation tools, for a difference, some of them will help you to auto-heal those locators. However, there are some, like testRigor, for example, that take completely different approach. And testRigor does not rely on any locators whatsoever. So testRigor tests work purely on end user level and do not rely on how page is implemented internally. And because we work on from end user's perspective, therefore they are as stable as like manual testers executing test cases manually, meaning that as soon as it is works for a human, it will work for on the testRigor platform. So what it ends up with? So what kind of benefits do you get, which will be helpful in the next part of this presentation to get value? What kind of value do you get here? The value is the following. So you get to build tests 15 times faster than your Appium. 15, and then our customers, for example, spend 200 times less time on test maintenance compared to Selenium Appium. So let's get actually in a little bit more details why I talk so much about test maintenance and why it is a problem. It's actually a larger problem than you might think. And that is because people spend so much time on test maintenance, mostly is catching up with changes by engineers, that at around 350 Selenium tests, it's a full-time job for a person to just maintain the tests, where virtually zero bandwidth available after a person is assigned around 300 to 350 tests on average. Of course, mileage vary. In case of Salesforce, it's dramatically less than that, meaning that at around 100 tests, it will be already full-time job. In case of Salesforce. So now, what's going on then? Imagine the situation that you're managing a team and you got to build automation and you hired your first QA engineer. She built 300 tests, and now she's full-time on test maintenance. Now you hire a second engineer, another 300 tests, and that's it, no more bandwidth, and third engineer, and 300 tests more. So total, you have now 900 tests automated. 3 people who are working full-time and not able to produce any more meaningful tests anymore because they are full-time on test maintenance, and unhappy because instead of building tests, all they do is maintaining tests. So there's a little bit of risk of churn in there. And most importantly, you most probably already ran out of your budget. So at some point after you hired that many engineers, the budget will run out, and therefore you're in a situation that not only you only have 900 tests, let's say, out of 3,000 automated, but you can't even build any more tests because you don't have any more budget available. So that is a huge problem, and related specifically to test maintenance and how tools like testRigor help our customers to solve those issues and block them to be able to get past those 30% on average. So next issue with Selenium test is flakiness. There are multiple sources of flakiness. Some of them are almost inevitable. There are certain ways to deal with that. For example, if you're relying on third-party system which is flaky on its own, there is unless resilience built into application itself, it might cripple up into your application. However, there are sources of flakiness that can definitely be addressed and are addressed by modern codeless test automation systems that are infrastructure-related flakiness. Example, if your test fails because browser crashed or there was a network timeout and so on and so forth, modern codeless test automation system would rerun your test elsewhere automatically a certain number of times or until it is proven that this issue is persistent and therefore not related to infrastructure. Some infrastructure glitches, to be more specific. Next is, and this is the most common reason for failure, is changes in the structure. If you're relying on XPaths, then you have to, in some cases, basically those XPaths change and your test will fail for no particular reason. That I believe to be the most frequent reason of test flakiness. On average, around 5% of Selenium tests will always fail. So this is again another statistics across the board. Therefore, it's another big issue. So if 5% of the tests fail, then you do not know if what you're trying to deliver is just basically a time waster. So you don't know if it's actually your change is good or not. You have to go dig, fix them, and so on and so forth. For example, to be specific, like let's say engineers are trying to run your tests on every commit, and the tests fail, and now we have to involve key engineer to figure out why did it fail, and key engineer would have to update the code, or they have to update the code in order to be able to update it. It's a very slow process, and it just basically eats both engineering and key engineering time. So codeless test automation systems definitely help there, all of them. All right. So as we established, the two of main values of modern codeless test automation systems are ability for non-technical people to build tests, and solving of flakiness and test maintenance problems with tests to save time and unblock people to be able to build more. Moreover, it changes the premise and the process how things are done, even for people. So regular process of building automation is like a person have to learn programming language, then they will start and programming framework related to test automation, such as Selenium. Then we will start building some automation. We'll learn some concepts on a job, because of course we're learning concepts on a job. It's challenging because you're learning by mistake. When you slowly build tests, because it's an engineering job. And then at some point you start to spend more time on test maintenance than on actually building tests. It's not fun at all. So compare it to modern way of doing that. And that is to learn basic automation concepts, and you can do it within an hour. By the way, if you're interested, links are available from testRigor documentation page online. So there are generic test automation concepts as well as concepts related to testRigor. Then you can quickly build test automation without programming, be it record and play or plain English. And then because the test maintenance challenge is solved for you, then you don't have to spend a lot of time on test maintenance. And then you can even copy paste your test cases to make them executable. Connie? All right.
Well, I see someone raise their hand, Artem, so I was trying to
got it.
figure out, does someone have a question? You can put it in the chat, or you can put it in the questions and answers. But I see someone, oh, now there's 3 people raise their hand. Do you have questions? Let's pause for questions.
Yeah, let's do the quick Q&A before we continue.
So it looks like Priyanka, do you have a question? I can open up your microphone so you can speak if you'd like to do that. Jeet, do you have a question?
Paul is saying that chat is disabled. Can you enable the chat? Is that possible for this webinar?
Let's just use the Q&A then. Sorry about that. So the question is, Artem, is it an open source tool? If not, then how will we practice? So we have a free version. Go ahead, Artem.
Yeah, Connie basically answered it. So there is a free version. You can sign up and use it for free online. There's a forever free version as well as a free trial. Yes, from organization's perspective, it is actually order of magnitude less expensive than open source tool, because what open source tools mean? It means that you need to involve engineers in order to build the code. Then you need to involve DevOps to run the test. You need to pay for infrastructure and so on and so forth, compared to codeless automation tools, which just take all of that and they'll do it for you. Like, all you can focus on is just creating the tests.
Okay. So there's other questions here. Another person asks, how can we learn testRigor? There is a free version on our site, and go to testRigor.com and you can find to sign up for the free version. Another question, if we have two elements with the same text, such as welcome Peter, how can we validate that, Artem?
So I understand the question that we need to validate that there are two welcome Peter text on the page, and you can basically validate that by validating that it has a second one. You can say, hey, page contains a second welcome Peter, and page doesn't contain third welcome Peter. So that's simple as that.
It's essentially how you view it on the page.
Yes, for how to use testRigor, there is a great resource in there. If you go to testRigor.com, if you go to resources, there is, of course, documentation you should read, and there are tutorials. And there are different people wrote tutorials. We put them even if they're not official in here. And there are also testRigor tips and tricks below, which are official ones. So there's, but from what I have seen, it basically covers all of the main topics, and you can pick and choose which way you would like to learn.
Okay, there's two more questions here. The first, if we are using an old product, what time will be needed to create new automation script? So it is possible to take documented tests and then create new tests. Go ahead, Artem.
So this is very generic questions. So for that generic questions, the answer can also be generic. So what time will take new automation script? Is this possible? And answer yes, is possible with very little time.
Okay.
To be more specific, so there is a way to set things up such that you will be copy pasting your own manual test cases to run in testRigor, but I can talk about it after I finish the presentation.
Okay, then another question, how secure is it? with respect to data protection to the company? It's a good question.
Yeah, testRigor takes security very seriously. We are SOC 2 Type 2 compliant, and we run security testing on a regular basis, as well as doing security reviews and so on and so forth. Everything is pretty tight.
Okay.
And of course, there is always option to deploy on premise for companies who thinks that is not enough.
Yep. So we're SOC 2 compliant, and also all of the passwords, etc., are securely kept in the tool, and then you can do on premise. All right. So the last question is about integrations, and all of the integrations are on the site, like with Lambda Test, Salesforce. There's a number of them. So thank you, everybody. You can keep asking questions in the Q&A, and Artem will continue now. We'll come back to you.
I see one last question. It's, is it easy to learn? And answer is yes, it is easy to learn. You can literally, once you look through documentation, start writing your tests. Right away, we see that our customers just write 85% as we claim of the test without even consulting with documentation right away out of the box. Again, it's because in plain English, most probably you'll just be able to express it into work. One more question came up. How does it scale? Would this approach work well with team that deploys several times a day? Great question. Yes, it actually scales far more easily compared to Selenium test. Selenium test, as you can imagine, it might be a little bit of a challenge to set everything up to run in parallel. Is definitely at least an effort. testRigor, on the other hand, will run all the tests out of the box in parallel. Again, I will get into that in a little bit more time, but basically this is testRigor pricing model is similar to that of browser stack, Lambda test and such, where we just charge for infrastructure, in particular for prioritization to execute your tests. So, however, unlike dealing with browser stacks, stack and Lambda test, you do not need to parallelize manually and do not need to do anything. testRigor will automatically pick up additional infrastructure and run test automatically to take as much advantage of it as possible, specifically optimizing for the fastest execution time. Do I need coding experience? As a manual tester, I've never done any automation at all. Will this work for me? Yes, definitely. It is very similar to writing test cases. If you're familiar with tools like Test Case Studio, you should check it out. It's a way to help people to write test cases. You can actually use Test Case Studio to write test cases which are executable on testRigor side. Anyway, thank you for your questions, and let me finish the presentation, and I guess I'll show a little bit more in order to explain some of the topics a little bit deeper. Anyway, so use of AI. So one of the ways how Codeless automation delivers value compared to coding tools is that intensive use of machine learning models. You already know that AI can be used for the test writing, for as you know, for element detection, for element classification, test writing assistance, where it doesn't write the whole test for you, but it will help you to finish your sentences and finish the test, and test adaptation in certain cases. Now, let me walk you through another important topic is how to prove, let's say you like certain tool, Codeless, you see that it will be very valuable. How do you prove to the management that it's actually worth it? In other ways, how to calculate ROI. And there are 3 ways how you do that. Fewer bugs in production, saving the budget, and improving efficiency. We'll go through all 3 of that. I'll try to do it quickly. So ROI of fewer bugs in production. Basically, this is calculating the value of test automation from first principles, meaning that so what is the goal of QA in general is to reduce number of issues that are leaked in production, and any automation whatsoever, especially Codeless one, will help because it can help you to just run more tests faster and therefore most probably catch more bugs. Now, how do you estimate how much exactly does it have? And that is, for that, you would need to figure out the price of the bugs. And you might need to involve the help of CFO or organization or like somebody that is related to finance or anything like that, and creating reporting and things like that in your organization. They might help you to figure out all the dollar value that had been lost or not gained due to all the bugs that had been in production. And then, so let's say you calculated, hey, it was $1 million, which we didn't get because we had bugs. And then you divide it by number of bugs that basically were released to production, to your knowledge, let's say 10, and then you get the price of the bug. One bug is $100,000 on average. So that is basically you calculate this kind of historical average like this, right? And then the value here is basically how much you're going to decrease the number of bugs. And to calculate it, you get the price of bug, which we calculated previously based on all of those 2 numbers. So the amount of value which has been lost or not gained divided by number of bugs. So that's the price of a bug times number of bugs which you expect to not to let into production. Let's say you expect the number of issues to be reduced from 10 to 2, then therefore the number of bugs that will not get into production is 8. If the price of the bug is $100,000, then the value of the tool for 1 year is 8 times 100,000, therefore $800,000. So this is kind of first principles based, probably the most direct and maybe in a sense correct way to do it. And this is something that will work all the way up to CEO. They will be able to understand it. Next, of course, is savings budget. You can say, hey, we have 10 QA automation engineers, 5 of them always wanted to be engineers. So good news. Now we will promote those QA engineers to become engineers, because now we will be able to, because we are adding, we are allowing our manual testers now to build tests, so we don't need to have that manual QA automation engineers. Well, mind you, you'll still would need some, because there are some more complex work in there related to DevOps, related to API testing, related to some more complex topics in there. But you can allow basically to get people promoted to engineering, and everybody will be happy. Engineering will be happy, you'll get more people, and people will be happy, and you basically come back and say, hey, we saved that amount of value because that's a salary of engineer, and this is how many engineers we no longer need on this particular project. And finally, this is the most popular one from what we have seen people are doing. However, we've seen all of that across the board. Slightly more popular would be ROI of improved efficiency, and that is based on efficiency on a particular person, right? If you have, if you get basically like you can calculate price of the test, right? This is where again it gets to. And I'll give you some references there, so don't be scared. Basically, to calculate price of the test, you get everyone's salary, like all automation engineers, let's say, I don't know, $1 million, and then divided by how many tests were built last 12 months. Let's say 10, so you get price of a test of 100,000, which is ridiculous in my calculation, but usually you'll get to different numbers depending where your location is. So in United States, on average, people build around 120 tests per year per QA engineer. And with salary of 120,000, you get like price of the test would be $1,000. If QA engineer is located in the United States, of course, if a salary is different country, then your price of a test might be different. Then there is a gigantic long calculation to come up with average price of maintenance. So where price of maintenance come from? What is that? So it was calculated that on the course of a lifetime of a test, around 10 years, how many times you'd need to get to the test, fix it, rewrite it, update it, and so on and so forth. Basically, if product is not dead, it's actually changing. Over the course of 10 years, it will dramatically change, most probably several times. And therefore, like the test probably would need to be rewritten several times. And therefore, with systems like Selenium, the price of test maintenance is 4.5 times larger than price of the test. So if your price of the test was $1,000, then the price of test maintenance would be 4,500. So total price of the test is the price to build the test and price plus price to maintain the test. Total is $5,500 for a test in our example. So you have to calculate those numbers for your particular case. But let's let's calculate the value then. So if there is a price of a test, then the value of more efficient tool is very simple. So it's how many tests you see you can prove you can build with a new way compared to how many tests you know based on your actual data, right? You can check a Git or something like that, or your test cases in test case management system. How many did you actually build during same period of time using your existing way? So that, let's say you build, let's say it's a year and you build, let's say 100 tests, again, all those random numbers, and you expect to build 2,000 tests, or 2,100 tests to make it easier to calculate. So the difference is net new 2,000 tests. You expect to build more with a new system. You can calculate it, multiply it by the price of the test, which is total to build and maintain is 5.5 thousand on average in the United States. So if it is 2,000 times 5.5 thousand, it is what, 11 million. So around 11 million dollars is your value, basically. Anyway, let me answer a couple of more questions before I get into a little bit more details and show the demo.
So there's a good question here, Artem. How to convince my company to use testRigor initially? And is there a support team?
How do zero support team? Yes, testRigor does provide support out of the box. Moreover, like there is basically unlimited support available. How to convince my company? But basically, this is why we went through those ROI calculations. So you can play with testRigor, and it's very easy to get a testRigor account. You can, if you go to testRigor account, let's start from the beginning, and then there is this sign up, or you can click here, start testRigor free. Both will get you to this page. And there are two options, well, three technically. You can talk to sales, of course, but again, there are two ways how you can create an account. You can create public free account. Just keep in mind, it is great for your personal use, unlimited free, but all of the tests will be public and searchable on the internet, including screenshots, and the videos of your tests will be published on YouTube. Just keep that in mind. So anybody will be able to see what exactly you're doing with what. And it is searchable. So if you go to bottom of the page, you can click on public tests. You'll be able to search and find any tests yourself and to see examples. It's another good way to learn. If you're doing an evaluation for a private company, you probably want to use free trial instead. It's a 14 days free trial. You can start it, play with it. If time is not enough, then you can always ping us. There will be a button, contact sales, and ask for a little bit more time, and we'll be happy to help you out there. So you can definitely try it. So once you tried it, if you see the benefits, you can calculate a potential ROI the way you think will be more impactful, or the way you like, or the way your manager like. whatever it is, and basically present that to the management and say, hey, look, this is how you can get the value of it if you'd like to, and look, this is what you have done so far, and so on and so forth. We'll be happy to help as much as we can, of course.
Yeah.
Next.
So the question is the 14-day trial period enough to try and showcase to the team and explain the value? So you can do the 14-day trial on your own, but we suggest that you set up a demo meeting. And in that demo meeting, we will, with your team, answer those technical questions. And we will help to, provide those answers for your own use cases. So like there's another question here about, can you tell me what points the testRigor can't automate it? Like alone in Selenium, we can't automate image validation, but to mitigate that, they have a Sakuli library to do that. And so I think that in each case,
Connie, I can take that, Norris. Okay. Yeah, so to explain what Connie was talking about for talking to us, whereas talk to sales, you can select here or you can request a demo to kick off your trial. So if you're requesting a demo, then in the demo you can agree on the trial. The best way to do a trial is that you can actually allocate enough time to actually do something. Because think about it. You don't actually need 14 days. So you need to check that this works, that works, and that works. And well, it's hours. Maybe it is weeks in Selenium you used to, but in testRigor, it's minutes or hours. It's very, very easy and very quickly. You don't even need that much. Usually 14 days is you already wrote all the tests you like, and now you want to wait until you have a release to run your test to make sure that everything runs fine. But the best way always to do the evaluation is to make sure there is enough time allocated to it. Otherwise, you just spending time and not getting anything or not doing anything. But again, so if you started at some point and you run into a situation where, hey, like you didn't have time and need extension, do let us know. We'll be happy to help. I think we skipped one of the questions where does IDE accessibility testing is supported by testRigor? And the answer is yes. And that is in settings, error reporting. As you can see here, you can say run accessibility test on each page. And then you can select the level on how many errors do you want to see, on what levels. Because very rarely a website would have exactly 0 accessibility issues. So you can choose, like as you started, you choose how much you want to see or what's the severity of those issues. And the way it works is very straightforward. It's exactly as you would think it would. So basically, for every page, it just runs accessibility tests, and that's it. And then it gives you accumulated report. So definitely yes, and it is important in certain cases. Now for image testing. Specifically, it is just built in testRigor. So the difference between Selenium and where you would need to run Sakuli and stuff like that in testRigor is that in testRigor, a lot of stuff is just built in. Like again, we have it on 2 levels. You can, and we support different types of visual validations, right? So there are some visual validations that are, if you go to validations page, that are very specific. So you want to check that your text is a certain color. You want to check that your button has certain background color. You want to check a certain property, meaning, for example, that font is bold and things like that. Example for those validations, for example, would be, well, colors of the button and text, of course. And if you have, let's say, an editor on the page that allows you to change font boldness, font size, and so on and so forth, you can validate that clicking a button which is supposed to make the text bold actually makes text bold. You can do things like that, and any other straightforward validations. This is one. However, in testRigor, you can also do more. Let me scroll up to the right section. If you find there is a check, right? So there are two types of checks. There's a check which would apply for the whole page, and checks which would apply to certain elements. So basically, for the testRigor, you can say things like compare this screen to previous version. And that is literally full screen comparison, which will compare visually, and you can give it some allowance if you know certain parts of the page will change, or you can compare certain part of the page to previous version, or you can compare it to specifically a downloaded sample image. This kind of stuff. testRigor, of course, have built-in OCR. If certain elements are actually images and not text, it's you can easily basically still work with them through OCR. And again, testRigor would work seamlessly with iframes, shadow DOMs, nested iframes and shadow DOMs, and shadow DOMs and shadow DOMs and shadow DOMs and iframes and shadow DOMs, any kind of combination like this. It will be completely transparent, and you will work with the page as a human, telling it how it should look as a human. So if underlying structure will change, it wouldn't matter. However, even there is a special section here saying visual validations. Drum roll. There we go, visual testing. Basically, next level is using of applitools. If you're familiar with applitools, it's a ultra advanced AI for visual validations. It can catch things for you and show it to you a little bit better than testRigor can, and testRigor definitely integrates with applitools. You can easily do validations using applitools if you would like to do so.
So the last two questions, Artem. One is, how long has testRigor been available, and any big companies using it yet?
How long is yeah? Well, we have been incepted back in 2015, so quite some time around. And yes, there are a lot of large companies using us. Some of them you probably know, like Netflix, Splunk, BusinessWire, and many others. The last question is for ADA. Do we have any support to integrate any libraries to perform unit testing before releasing to QA? testRigor is an end-to-end testing framework. You can test locally, so you can use it almost same as your unit testing framework and keep all of your tests in your own Git, because all testRigor tests are plain text. However, like we do not have unit testing, specifically unit testing libraries. And keep in mind that it's not, I'm not sure you will be able to do a lot with modern applications as a unit test, because modern pages are dynamic and we render it in the browser based on some parts rendered, like which you'll get from a server for different parts. So it's just some kind of a constructor, and therefore it will be pretty hard to make it as a unit test. It's much easier to run the actual server and render the page and then run those tests on the page. Like it will be order of magnitude easier. So I'm not sure if it's even possible in theory as a unit test, but definitely possible as end-to-end test. Anyway, so the last thing I would like to do is to show you how you can work with testRigors, like a point of testRigor, to answer a little more questions. We are going a little bit over time, but hopefully that's an extra content for just people who like to stick and learn more. Okay, so let's do a small part of sign-up test with Twitter. Of course, we're not going to go all the way through. They'll probably block us, but we'll show some of the points here easily. So let's get that and go in. The first thing you start from is creating a test suite, and we have like 10,000 of them, so it takes a bit of time for me to load. It will be the same experience in your case. So you would usually provide username and password. testRigor can generate some tests for you. Let's just do one. Yes, of course. So we have created the test suite here. Now let's, and I'll show you another thing, and basically I will be walking you through showing what's the difference between manual test and automation test. For that, we have a helper. Again, to be clear, testRigor is plain English as a language. It is not a record and play tool. However, we do have a helper in Chrome to help you to build first test, and I'll show you why it is actually not even the most efficient way to build tests. But for this example, let's do that. Center here, let's use email. Let's put an email in there. Oh, really? Some kind of a date. Next. Well, I don't think you need to do anything in here. Next. And here again, nothing to do. You click sign up. And the Twitter actually thinks that I'm a bot. Yes, I need to authenticate, and we can't actually go any further on that. Anyway, let's stop. and select our test suite. Here, let's call it sign up. And testRigor can detect that you're logged in. Here it's incorrectly assumed that you are. So that login, we can remove that. As you can see, all the steps are as close as possible to how you would say it in your test case management system. Here you want to click on emails. The button just changed name. You don't need to click anymore. I think we also skipped submit. I'm not sure. Anyway, so this is these are the steps. I will add those. However, this is not a test though. And let me explain what I mean. We can click edit test case. It doesn't make sense to run it. So what's the difference between sequence of steps and the actual test is that a test should be repeatable. Automated test must be able to run multiple times, and of course, it will allow me to run the same email multiple times. So what we go in, what we will be doing is we will be generating the unique email, and it's super easy. So there is literally exactly that command. So generate the unique email. Copy that. Paste it in here. There you go. And in general, you'll be able to check the email testRigor run email server. So once you generated the email, you actually will be able to validate that with just one command that you received the email. It will render it for you as a page, and then you'll be able to extract verification code and so on and so forth. However, here, what I wanted to point out is I want to, let's get all of these steps and call it fill out sign up form. For that, let's go to reusable rules, paste it in here, call it fill out sign up form. And then save and find another place. We have it in here, replace it. And now, if you look into test case, you'll see that it looks like this, very simple. This is a big deal because you can use your own language from your own test cases to outline a sequence of steps. Moreover, once you outline your own terminology, you can literally just copy paste your own test cases into testRigor, and with as little cleanup as is technically possible, you can just run them because you outlined your own phrases already. So this is another tip on how our customers achieve very high speeds on test creation, especially if they have test cases documented, which we see pretty often. Okay, so hopefully that answers some of the points which were unclear before when I was answering. And let me look into last couple of questions that pop up. Is it possible to declare test config as code, or is it only available via UI? So config as code is It's co-location vesicles. Basically, testRigor have been designed for CI/CD, and everything testRigor is just plain text, right? So you can literally copy paste that script, which is generated specifically for what project with the tokens and IDs, and paste it into your CI/CD, such as Jenkins Circle CI and such. And execute it and get the results from your CI/CD. Now, on top of that, you can actually keep all the tests, test cases, and settings in your Git and just pass them as parameters of this API call. Let me just try to find that. Yes, there we go. For settings, there is a schema here, whereas you can see your current settings that you can basically override. And this way you can have a configuration basically stored with your tests or changed every single time you execute the test. For example, if you have dynamic environments that you spin up for running end-to-end tests on every commit, then you can override URL, which is absolutely trivial. You can just specify URL there, or you can override test cases, test rules, settings, and so on and so forth. So again, because everything is plain text, it is definitely possible to keep everything in your Git and override it from your Git whenever you need. Hopefully I answered that questions and understood it correctly. So finally, the one last question here. Thank you. Do you have any support to log in the application using mobile number OTP for automation? And the answer is yes. If you go to documentation, there is a section saying SMS messages on text. And there are basically ways for you to send messages, receive messages, even allocate phone numbers dynamically. And there is an example of 2FA login with SMS or OTP login with SMS, if you call it this way. So there are steps, and after clicking verify me, this is how you can basically get the message, save it as SMS, extract the code from that message, because it probably also contains other words in there, and then enter it and proceed. So it definitely is possible, and we have a lot of customers who are using that particular. Right now, the way it works is through Twilio integrations. You allocate your Twilio account, you allocate your Twilio number, and then you'll be able to work with your phone numbers out of the box, no problem. One more question. Can you email PowerPoint as well as which is used in demo today? Definitely happy to share PowerPoint once we will be sharing the recording. Okay,
Right.
I apologize, we ran way over time. Sorry about that.
But thank you everyone for joining. We have a session every 2 weeks that's short. It's about 20 minutes, and Artem covers an individual topic. We have many recordings of those various topics, so you might be interested in those. And I will mail a link to those too when I mail out the recording. And yeah, so Artem's showing you it's at testRigor.com/events. And underneath that, Artem, so you can sign up there to get them on your calendar. But underneath that is all of the recordings of all of the different topics we've covered. So if you're interested, it's super helpful. And those are all there, but you can certainly join us, and there's time for question and answer, just like this, every 2 weeks. We do that. You can add it to your calendar. So thank you, everybody, for taking time out of your day to join us. We really appreciate it. And you can always email us too, and ask questions or sign up for the trial. There's lots of things to get involved with it. So thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.